All right, so hello everyone. It's good to be back. And last year I said, isn't it amazing that Spring I/O is happening again? I'll say it once more. It's absolutely stunning to be here. So I'm going to run an experiment in this talk. Usually speakers are not so happy when you're dangling around on your smartphone all the time. But I ask you to pull out your smartphone because this is going to be a talk with interactive elements in which you, as an audience, will be able to participate. Now let's see how the Wi-Fi fares. Yeah, if that works, because this is an online presentation that I'm running right now. And I will sometimes ask you questions, polls, and stuff like that. I hope the internet stays stable. If not, I have a fallback option. So one of the questions that I asked you, why did you become a software engineer? And I heard it from the backstage. Someone yelled money. I heard it, yeah? And so this is a little bit of a topic which doesn't have to do a lot with Spring, yeah? Of course, Spring is amazing, but I would like to talk a little bit about some business things. And yeah, one could think business and money, yeah, that's why I was poking around that. No, I think you will become ways more valuable as a developer when you start to understand the business better. Yeah, I think your value as a developer will dramatically rise. So just a few words about myself. I'm Michael Plöd. I work as a fellow at InnoQ, long-time Spring user. I think this is my 4th or 5th time at the Spring I/O conference. Looking forward to be here. And of course, Spring and all these technologies, they are awesome. Yeah, they are beautiful, and we love all the technology stuff. But this slide is the last time I will talk about Spring in this talk. Sorry, not sorry. So if you're into for a hardcore tech talk, this is not a hardcore tech talk, not at all. There won't even be a single line of code in my talk. I want to motivate you, yeah, for your domain and for curiosity, for business stuff, for moving out of your comfort zone, for looking over the boundaries, yeah, of your day-to-day work, for taking a step back and starting to understand problems. And I'm not just going for a motivational thing here. I will also give you some hints how to do that, how you can get started with these things. I'll combine that with a bunch of stories from my day-to-day work as a software engineer and so on. But don't be afraid. I don't want to turn you into a business suit who's running around in a tie and just doing business stuff. No. That's not my intention. But I think, yeah, if you deal with these things, and I already said it, it will make you a way more valuable developer for your organization, for your employer, and I think when you're a more valuable developer, for the person who was screaming money, it will bring you more money in the mid to long term. So, why will your value increase when you do that? I think you will write better code which is more maintainable. I will elaborate on that. On every argument that I bring forth, I will have a dedicated section in this talk and talk about it. Yeah? The next step, I think, yeah, you will make better modularization decisions. Yeah? Stuff that we hear are microservices, self-contained systems, serverless architectures, and so on. Good stuff. But what all of these architectural choices do is they make your modules more explicitly visible. Yeah? So, in order, for instance, for being able to move fast in a distributed system with microservices or whichever deployment type you may choose for your application, you need to make sure that a lot of the decisions that are being made in that module stay in that module. Yeah, let's assume there is a team being responsible for a certain service or for a certain application. How many decisions can they make without having to coordinate with someone else? So very often in a software architectural way, we talk about loose coupling, don't we? And high cohesion. But this has also an organizational impact when we want to move fast. So we need to find good boundaries within which we can make many decisions without having to coordinate with others a lot. And I think business knowledge and domain knowledge goes a long way and helps you a lot in that task. I think you will also heavily improve on your communication skills. Yeah? And I think you will communicate better, and I think you will be heard more. I very often see many developers, many development teams that say, oh yeah, well, this sucks, but we don't have an influence. The business doesn't listen to us. The management doesn't listen to us. I think when you have a deeper insight into your domain and your business, you may be able to bring forth better arguments for non-technical folks to convince them of certain things. Yeah? And finally, I think, and that's, in my eyes, the last stage, so to say, the end boss, yeah, the boss fight. I think you can also get a significant impact on the product design of your application, yeah, if you're able to do that. So I would say, without further ado, let's elaborate on these things. So let's start with why you can write better code, which is more maintainable when you have a better understanding for your domain and your business. So usually, every one of you is part of an innovation cycle. Yeah? So we have teams that take a look at signals from the market. The market always expects a better user experience. Yeah? Think about the automotive industry. Yeah? There are a bunch of car makers, and maybe you move from booth to booth to booth, and ask the car makers, hey, how often do you get asked about over-the-air software updates nowadays? Yeah, because there is one exhibitor who was moving pretty bold on that area out there. Yeah? Great user experience is very often enabled by software, which is then built by and developed by the teams. But things change. Yeah, we are in a continuous iteration of things. We are learning continuously. The market changes continuously. Business models change continuously. So therefore, I think we need a healthy foundation in our software. A foundation that can accommodate change. There's a guy in the Agile community called Alan Holub. And Alan is a great follow on Twitter or Mastodon. So if you're on Twitter or Mastodon, make sure to follow Alan. He has a bunch of great quotes. And one of his quotes is that the key to an incremental architecture is to build on a framework that can accommodate change. That framework is the domain. By modeling the domain, you can more easily handle changes to that domain. So what does that mean? So what's in there for you? I mean, that quote sounds pretty smart. It is. But what's in there for you? So basically what Alan says is this. Yeah? So we should model our software architecture according to business domains. There is another quote. Yeah? We can even drive that further. That's a topic I'm not going to elaborate heavily in this talk, but I want to give you a sneak peek into that area. There has been a book by Dr. Nicole Forsgren, Jess Humble, and Gene Kim called Accelerate. Give me a hand. Who has heard about that book? Yeah, a few hands. Read that book. It's a very interesting one because it's not written from the perspective or the personal experiences of the author. No, this book shows you results of a very renowned scientific study. And they tried to find out, are there certain patterns on an architectural, cultural, organizational way that high-performing IT delivery organizations do? Or are there patterns that low-performing IT delivery organizations do? So one of the findings was that a loosely coupled software architecture and organizational structure to match is a key predictor for your continuous delivery performance and the ability to scale the organization and the delivery performance in a linear fashion. What does that mean? So if you have let's say, a totally messed up legacy system, yeah, one of those big balls of mud that directly stem out from Mordor or something like that, yeah? And you want to have a higher development speed on that thing. You can't just add 10 more people to a team of 8 people. Yeah? Or you have a team of 5 people. If you update the team number to 10, you will not get twice as faster. Yeah? There's this mythical man-month Dunbar's number thing. Yeah? That doesn't work. So what this quote basically says in the innovation cycles is that we want to have an alignment between software and teams. So that's one of the goals that we want to follow there. I won't elaborate any further on that. I just want to raise some awareness that there is a little bit more hidden in there as well. So let me ask you a question. Pull out your smartphones and answer that question. What goes into production? The knowledge and expertise of business folks, the content of specifications, or the assumptions about the domain which is in the heads of the developers? What's being deployed to prod? What do you think? All right. So let's see the results. The votes are coming in. There's quite a few people who say the assumptions about the domain in the heads of the developers goes to production. And I think you're absolutely right, yeah, with that guess. Let me tell you a story. Those folks who have been in my all-day workshop on strategic DDD heard that story yesterday, but now I have a visualization for that story as well. Michael, as a young developer, I was working for a bank, and they said to me when I started at that bank as an external developer, hey, you're in the mortgage loan application team, and you're supposed to implement the scoring engine. Okay, cool. So the organizational setup was as follows. Yeah, there was Michael, me. There was a business analyst whom I talked to, who wrote the specification, and this person talked to the risk managers. Yeah, and I must say, I read the specification. It was a 50-pager, something like that. It was good. It was understandable. It was thorough. It seemed complete. It seemed logical. Yeah, so I only had some minor questions on that. Yeah, so the starting point was something like that. So when the credit application was submitted, I had to integrate with an external credit agency to obtain a credit rating for the applicants. I needed to go to a core banking system, implement an integration there to get their balance for the current amounts. And finally, at the end, yeah, there is a result, green or red. Yeah? So the business rules, yeah, for turning that application into green and red, yeah, were as follows. Yeah? There were a bunch of rules. So how high is the probability for the repayment from the credit agency? If we have a negative monthly surplus on the monthly cash flow, we kick the people out because they can't afford the loan, and so on and so forth. So basically, from a rule level, yeah, so we had to process these rules in order to come to the result. The specification implied the following structure to me as a developer for those rules. Okay, there are some rules that calculate some points. Yeah, so for instance, a person who lives in Berlin, in Munich and Hamburg gets more points. Someone who has a high repayment probability from the credit agency gets a lot of points. If you have a high plus surplus in your cash flow, you get some points and so on. And there are a bunch of no-go criteria. For instance, if you can't afford the loan, that's a no-go criteria. And there has been a group of rules where we say if there is a no-go criteria present, it's red. Yeah? If there's no no-go criteria present and we have over 120 points, green. Below 120 points, red. Yeah? Sounds fair enough, doesn't it? Well-structured, logical thing, fine. So I built my scoring engine according to that structure, which I assumed in my head looked roughly like that. Yeah, so we do some stuff, we have the points, we have the no-go criteria, there's some stuff going in and out, and in the end, we have a result. Now came the phase for the acceptance test and a change in communication. I received an Excel sheet with 5,000 test cases. And my job was to write some Java code, to read that Excel sheet, and process that 5,000 test cases through the scoring engine. Of course, errors popped up. Yeah? Now, a very prominent error was a faulty reading from Excel. I mean, reading Excel files in Java applications is a pain in the... You know what I mean. Yeah? So that was one category, easy to find. Another category was an implementation bug by me. The next category was the test case was wrong. So when I had the guess that the test case was wrong, I went to the business analyst and said, hey, I think there is an error. And he said, oh no, I can't answer that. You need to talk directly to the risk manager. So there's the telephone number and the email address. Talk to her. And so I switched the communication and I started talking to that person in the risk management team. And during that conversation, I developed a pretty bad gut feeling. But the go live was quite fine. 2 minor bugs, nothing special. Yeah? All seemed good. But then came a new requirement. Yeah? They said, if there is a red scoring result, we want to see if this result turns green when the people bring in more own capital, more own funding. So for a mortgage loan application, you usually bring, at least in Germany, some amount of money to the table. Let's say you finance a house for 400K. You bring 100K to the table. The bank does the other 300K. You're slaved to the bank for the rest of your life until you have paid the mortgage off and so on. So they wanted to find out if this is red, and if we bring in more money, does it turn green? And if yes, how much more money do they need? So that they can tell the people, hey, listen, your dream apartment, we can't do that. But if you come up with 20,000 more euros, we're in business. Maybe ask your parents, the grandparents, whomever. Yeah, maybe you have rich parents. Yeah? Sounds fair enough. Sounds like a good idea from a business perspective, doesn't it? Absolutely. Understandable. Now, the problem is, I told them, okay, listen, this sounds like a great idea, but this is a big change for me. Yeah? Because it affects nearly everything in the scoring. They said, no, you're wrong. It's just in one part. Why do you say it affects everything? This is an easy change. It's just in one part of the scoring. So in their brain, they somehow had a different perspective on that thing. Yeah? So the risk managers started to think that I do my surname justice. So for the non-German speaking folks, if you replace the P in my last name by B, and you enter that to DeepL or Google Translate, my last name translates to stupid. So every time I make a mistake, I can say, take a look at my passport. I have it official. I'm stupid. So that's what they thought. So obviously, we found out that there is a different mental model in the heads of the risk managers. So their perspective, we talked, and they then said, hey, no, we're not talking about points and no-go criteria. What we do is we group those rules. Yeah, we're scoring the applicant, we're scoring the monthly cash flow, we're scoring the credit agency rules, the real estate financing, and so on. And in those clusters, we have those rules. Now, the fun thing, when we found that out, we realized that everyone was right from their perspective. I was right by saying from my so-called mental model, so the structuring of the domain of the business in my head, that this affects everything. This was right. But from their perspective, having a different mental model, it was also right because it just affected one part in there. Yeah? So what I did, I said, hey, okay, give me an overview, which rules are in which cluster. Yeah, like on the previous slide. And I'll refactor the code. I refactored the code. It took me 2 days. And during the refactoring, I was actually able to implement that change instantly. It was super easy. It suddenly was super maintainable. Yeah? So the new code looked roughly like that. Now, I think the key learnings from that story, I think that's a very important story. First of all, yeah, is essential that you understand the mental model which is in the heads of the business experts, of the business people whom you're writing your code for. Yeah? Their requirements, they're coming from that mental model. I know quite a few developers sometimes think, oh, what a crazy requirement. But let me assure you, no one in the business wakes up at 7 a.m. in the morning and says, today I'm going to torture some poor developer souls with some utterly stupid requirements. No one does that, believe me. No one. And what they do when they come to you with new requirements, they come from their perspective. So understanding that perspective is absolutely key. And also go ahead and don't just understand it, reflect that perspective in your code, in the way how you structure your code, how you ramp up your packages, your classes, your services, and so on. Because then you will have a more maintainable code. Yeah? Also try to reduce the amount of implicit assumptions that are in your head as much as possible. In the moment where you realize, oh, I'm making a design decision as a developer based on an assumption, write it down. Because in the moment where you write it down visibly for someone else, you give them a chance to chip in and give you feedback on that assumption. Yeah? I always say, I'm a fan of clean code. Clean code, there's good stuff in there. But I think you can do, in terms of maintainable code, as much clean code as you want to. In my eyes, the holy grail for maintainability is this stuff here. Yeah? If you do a lot of the ideas from that area, good. But you will always hit a maintainability barrier when your structure in your code doesn't match this perspective. Always. Or how Alberto Brandolini said, who is the inventor of a method called Eventstoreman. It's not the domain expert's knowledge that goes into production, it is the assumption of the developers that goes into production, as we already found out in our poll. And now let me give you a quick hint. Maybe you wondered what those strange graphics with these orange sticky notes and the rules and so on looks like. I used a visualization that comes from a collaborative modeling technique. There are techniques on the market called knowledge crunching methods or collaborative modeling techniques. So they come very heavily from the behavior-driven development community, from the domain-driven design community, but also from the agile product development community, stuff like event modeling, domain storytelling, event storming, example mapping, and so on. Take a look at those methods. They help you in the conversation with business people to extract that knowledge. So basically, what I have done in my slides already, I used a technique called design-level event storming. Yeah? Usually in those techniques, we always work with sticky notes and stuff like that. And what I've shown you is a method called design-level event storming, yeah? Where we try to find out, hey, the starting point are some things, where are the rules, how many rules do we have? Based on that, when you do that in a workshop, you can already start to write unit tests. If you reflect the language on those sticky notes in your code, your business people will be able to read those unit tests. I had a very interesting thing. A domain expert asked me, hey, have I been able to read the code there? I was like, yes. And this person instantly felt 10% more digital. It was super motivating for them. Yeah? And then we grouped the rules. Yeah? Now, let's take a look at how to make better modularization decisions. Yeah? We already talked about this modularization on a lower level, but now let's take a look at modularization on a higher level. Yeah? I think there are many choices to group domain concepts. For instance, in this example, by shape, color, text, size. Which one is the right one? It depends. George E.P. Box once said, all models are wrong, some of them are useful. So you need to find out what the useful ones are. Now, grab your smartphones and reflect a little bit on your application, on your product. In how far do you think that you understand the customer segments, the value propositions, the channels, and the cost structure and revenue streams of your business model. Be honest. If you vote fast, you're more honest. Don't overthink. All right, I'll cut it off now. Let's see. Okay, so the customer segments, yeah, fairly okay. The value proposition, yeah, similar. Channels, better. Cost structure, revenue stream, not so much. I kind of expected that to a certain degree. Now, I think there is a lot of stuff being shoved upon developers nowadays, yeah, with DevOps, DevSecOps, DevSecDataOps, and whatever. Yeah, and I don't want to say you need to do more and more stuff. So I don't say you as developers should develop a business model. No. But I think it helps you a lot to understand the business model. And there is a canvas technique called the business model canvas. This is not a documentation tool. This is a helper for you to ask some questions. So go ahead and ask your product owner, hey, what's actually the value proposition? Can we write that down? Can we get a shared understanding of that? Can we get a shared understanding about customer segments and so on? So this is no rocket science here, but this is also a technique that gives you a starting point in that direction. You may now ask, what's in there for me? Wait for it. Yeah? Melissa Perry had a great book called Escaping the Build Trap. And what she said there is when companies do not understand their customers or users' problems well, they cannot possibly define value for them. Instead of doing the work to learn this information about customers, they create a proxy that is easy to measure. Value becomes the quantity of features that are delivered, and as a result, the number of features shipped becomes the primary metric of success. Yeah? Or a counter on Jira tickets being hacked down. Yeah? Now, again, here is the value thing. This book is not targeted directly at developers, but we can take some inspiration from there, in my eyes. Let me ask you another question. To which degree do you agree with the following sentences? There are modularization options in your software that work for or against a value proposition. So how you draw your module boundaries, what do you think? Hello? Yeah. Let me tell you, I think it's awesome how many people are participating in those polls. That's a great thing. So, I think there is a high degree of agreement there, and I personally also agree with you here. I think about a platform for selling insurance products. Do we want to sell each insurance product the same way in a very unified vendor? Then choosing modularization options by sales step for all of the products may be a good idea, if that's our value proposition. If our value proposition is to come up with a very specialized, very individual sales process, we may want to modularize by the product. As a very fairly simple example. But I think taking a look at the value proposition and the business model is something that we should always double check our modularization options against. And so I'd like to raise the question, how can we come up with proper boundaries for modules, be it in monoliths or microservices, when we don't understand the value proposition? I think that's not possible. Yeah? So ask these questions. What value do we deliver to the customer? Which one of your customer's problems are we helping to solve? Which job are we helping the customer to get done? Which customer needs are we satisfying? What bundles of products and services are we offering? Yeah? And there are many different types for value proposition. Yeah, you can go for accessibility, convenience, getting a job done, customizability, flexibility, price, branding, status, and so on. Yeah? There is no wrong or right here. It's a matter of strategy. And I want to highlight here, it's not your job to define this. I think you as developers should at least roughly understand this. Or maybe also challenge this. I'll come back to that later. If you want to dig deeper on that, there's a bunch of bookends, Business Model Generation and Value Proposition Designed by Strategizer, are really good books on that. Also, there is a GitHub repository from a group of people called the Domain-Driven Design Crew, which publishes quite a bit of content on GitHub under a Creative Commons license. I'm a part of that group as well. And we also came up with a startup process into that, and also with a canvas technique for bounded contexts. And it may be a good idea to align your modules and software to bounded contexts. I don't have the time to dig deep into that stuff. I think last year at Spring.io, I did a full hour talk just on this. Yeah, so I could talk on about that for half a day if I want. Yeah, but today, just a sneak peek, there is something that you can look into. Yeah? Now let's take a look about the communication part. What could possibly go wrong in terms of communication? I'm getting very evil now. Yeah? So if we take a look at that hotel room, how would the business, how would usual non-IT folks name these things in that room? Yeah? So we have a naming called painting, TV, window, trolley, chair, desk. No surprises here. I forgot my red devil's horns because usually I would put them up now. Yeah, I didn't bring them. I'm being sarcastic now on the next slide, and I don't want to offend anyone, but it's an observation that I have from quite a few code reviews. So let's say we implement that hotel room in code. What class names or package names do I very often see in, I would say, 60 to 70% of the code bases that I'm seeing as a consultant? Stuff like transparency factory, entertainment provider singleton, work enablement device, REST provider, rollable stuff container, or decorator input. Yeah? And very often that language leaks to the business. I have seen a fashion retail store where the names of the DB2 data of the DB2 columns and tables were leaking to the sales floor through a 3270 mainframe terminal. They were talking about table names on the fashion retail floor from the DB2 database on the mainframe. I think that's not necessarily the way it should be, to be honest. Yeah? So first of all, what we need is empathy there for that communication. So please be aware about the language you use with the business. Yeah? Don't scare them away with too much tech slang. I met business people who told me they felt stupid when they sometimes talk to developers because they don't understand 20% of the words they say. Because we hear Kubernetes here, we see Spring Boot here, and they're great technologies, no disrespect. But when we want to understand the business, maybe a little bit different. Also, let me give you some food for thought. In many job postings, I see companies that are looking for solution-oriented architects and developers. I would rather look for problem-oriented ones. Folks who take a step back and try to understand the problem first before they jump headfirst into solutions. A great book on that is the Software Architecture Elevator book by Gregor Hoppe. And Gregor had a good quote in there. Modern architects align organization and technology, reduce friction and chart transformation journeys. In addition to working with UML and architecture styles, such architects ride the elevator from the penthouse, where the business strategy is set, to the engine room, where the enabling technologies are implemented. They shun popular buzzwords in favor of a clear strategy defined by conscious decision-making. So, if you're on the track to become an architect, I think communication is very important, that you can talk to various stakeholders in order to understand these things. And now let's approach the last part here. Of course, we could also talk a lot about this communication thing, but I think curiosity and asking questions about business things may be a good helper in that. Now, very often we see organizations that try to shift from projects to products, especially in the agile world. Those tech-enabled organizations, yeah? Where technology is becoming a core strategic asset, where we don't want to have any more feature factories, yeah? Where we have a strong aim for insourcing of development functionality, yeah? Which is core to the business. Yeah? Or in terms of product thinking, it is a holistic view on technology, users, and the business. Now, Narin Katakam defined product thinking as the journey from the problem space of the users to the solution space of the business. The goal of this journey is to reduce the gap between users and the business. But you can also say to reduce the gap between the business and technology. Now, what do you think? What's one of the main sources for new product and feature ideas? Tell me.
Other applications?
Yeah, other applications? Good one.
User interviews.
User interface?
Interviews.
Interviews, yeah. Direct customer feedback, for instance. Using your own problems, eat your own dog food. Good idea, yeah. Life experience. Mm-hmm. So there was a rating, yeah. By Marty Kagan, they did a research. So the best sources were direct customer feedback, team brainstorming, market research, competitor products, sales team, executive orders, crowdsourcing, external consultants, and other. Yeah? So I'm an external consultant, don't listen to me, yeah, when it's about your product. Yeah? And maybe you realize that word value. So if you're just using your engineers to code, you're only getting about half of their value. Yeah, in this case. So, interesting stuff here. Now let me ask you one more question. I'm pretty sure quite a few of you work in organization where the management jumps around and says, digitalization, we need to digitalize everything. Digital here, digital that, and so on. How would you describe digitalization? What do you think? So maybe you want to write some stuff down. Yeah, there you need to do some typing. I'll give you a bunch of seconds to do that. So, let's see. More efficiency, unknown, accelerating the business, automized processes, robot, getting rid of paper, no paper, headache, a big void. That's good. Among us, paperless, migration, save paper, progress, ease, and so on, yeah. Good stuff. Oh, yeah, there we go. No manual work, that looks amazing. Improvement, Bitcoin. Getting rid of fax in Germany. Yeah, my wife is a medical doctor, and the fax machine is absolutely critical infrastructure for them. Yeah? But it's not because of them, because it's of the system. Yeah? Okay, good stuff. Thanks for that. But now let's take a look at the purpose of digitalization from a business perspective. There's good stuff that you wrote down, but let's take a step back and consolidate that. I think there are two purposes for digitalization. One is improve an existing business model with technology. Yeah? Getting rid of paper. So there is an existing business model, there is a paper-based process, we write a Spring application. Oh, I mentioned Spring, unbelievable. And it's improved. We don't change the business model a lot. Yeah, we want to make it faster, more cost efficient, more convenient, and so on. But there is another purpose, that we create a whole new business model enabled by tech. Yeah? Josh was poking around a little bit on that, yeah, by implying ChatGPT somewhere. I think this AI, ML stuff will create whole new business models. But both things, did you realize? Both purposes included the word business and tech together. Yeah? So one of a penthouse opinion by the management, let's just introduce DevOps. Yeah? Okay, so if we have developers and architects that use DevOps together with operational knowledge, we get to you built it, you run it. Good idea. But when you design stuff that doesn't fit, you can't do as much DevOps as you want. You will always have a nice result, a subpar result, yeah, which is okay-ish. But I think if we collaborate with the business as well, and domain-driven design may be an option to do that, we can get to a step, you design it, you build it, and you run it. Isn't this whole thing, digitalization, when we want to improve an existing business or create a new business with technology, an inspiration that there needs to be a combined creative process between two parts where developers show opportunities to the business. Hey, there's this new tech, we could do that, and that would fit in the business model. Yeah? And this is where you can also get an influence. Or, hey, we can improve that existing business model with the usage of that tech. Yeah? There is a nice infographic by Amplitude, yeah, that shows several stages in terms of journey towards product teams. And I think if we want to shift left, yeah, if we want to move responsibilities to the left, it requires that the developers understand the business as well as the business understands tech a little bit better. And that only works through direct collaboration. So I'm pretty sure that quite a few of you folks would love to work in some of the lower segments of that infographic. But that also requires us on the tech side to take a closer look at the biz side. And the business folks to take a closer look at the dev side. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street. Yeah? So let me wrap that up. I'm absolutely convinced that business and domain knowledge will make you a more valuable developer. And I have to say, speaking from my own experience, I always loved talking to business folks. I always loved to dig into a domain and to find out about all the intricate details and so on. And from my own experience, I can say it made my day-to-day job way more interesting, yeah, than writing code and code and code. That's fun, of course, no doubt. But the day-to-day job gets super interesting when you start dealing with those things and when you have those breakthrough experiences. So I remember, if you remember that scoring engine, when I found that out and I refactored the code, and suddenly it was crystal clear how that new requirement was super easy to implement and to test. It was one of those moments where I said, yes, that was awesome. Yeah, that was great. And I think it's these moments that make our job absolutely worthwhile. So I would say, without further ado, thank you very much for listening. I hope I was able to inspire you a little bit. I know this is a bit of an unusual talk for such a technology-heavy conference. But I think when I'm at a conference, I always like myself to go into talks that are a little bit outside of the comfort zone of the typical conference program. I hope that I motivated you a little bit. If not, fair enough. If yes, let me know. You can follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, LinkedIn, everywhere. And I'm happy to respond if you have any further questions. We have 1.5 minutes left. So are there any questions from your side or any remarks or additional ideas, additional observations? If not, I'll be around in the hallway track for another 3 hours, I guess.
Gentlemen.
So there's a mic.
Okay, hi, my
Hi.
name is Varga. I won't stand up because I guess it's enough just to hear me. At first, thanks for your presentation. I kind of like it. I like the perspective as you had like site literature, like for architecture, for product, for design. It's kind of good. Also, I really like the sneak peeks into some kind of methods you used. And my question is, where can we find the presentation?
I will upload it to Speaker Deck, and I will upload the presentation with your answers. So take a look at the hashtag for the conference. I think during the day, probably when I'm waiting for my flight at the airport tonight, I will upload the deck, follow the hashtag, and on Twitter, Mastodon, LinkedIn, I will send a link there. Or just observe my Speaker Deck account. Thank you.
Yeah, I think some man over there has a microphone as well.
Yeah.
That's me. There we go. How can you apply this when your customers are developers?
When my customers are?
Developers.
I would still start searching for the value proposition of the thing that you do together with them. And I think there are some things where you can be pretty sure in terms of, for instance, the business model canvas can be a pretty good starting point. Or this design level event storming stuff that I've shown you can also be a good starting point. And you will pretty sure end up with a bunch of assumptions. Write them down and start finding people who can answer your assumptions and then bring them in.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome.
We also have a question over here. And by the way, guys, if you want to go to your other session, you can. You can also stay here. Might have time for questions, and we'll start the next one. So over to you.
Hi, so I have a question of a bit like, again, sarcastic nature.
Perfect. I love sarcastic nature.
Isn't it going to happen in quite several situations, like it happened with DevOps, that business decides that there is a possibility of cutting costs, and developers can do DevOps and they can do that design stuff, and like let's abuse it?
Of course, the risk exists. Yeah, the risk absolutely exists, and it's super easy to lie to yourself in that area. Yeah, be aware of it. There's no way to prevent it, I think. Yeah, I mean, if you want to abuse stuff, it happens, but I think maybe you can raise some risk, or you can address the abuse. Yeah, but it depends on the environment you're in. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming in such big numbers. Thanks for your participation. I'll see you in the hallway track later on. Cheers.